Good morning, Wrestling Inc. Get up, get going. Happy Monday. It is time to talk some pro wrestling news from the past weekend. It is me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Monday, except for last Monday because I was drinking because it was the 4th of July weekend. But he's here this Monday. Most Mondays, it's Michael Wiseman. Michael, welcome to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
It's in my Wrestling Inc. contract that I get all federally mandated holidays off.
Wow, that's a better deal than I have. I got to talk to Raj. Well, that's a pretty good deal. No, I certainly enjoyed it. Did you do anything fun? Did you go see another Foo Fighters Dave Chappelle concert or something?
Nothing that big. Went and saw Fast and the Furious, so some more F's in there, right? Saw a band play some classic America tunes, you know.
Okay, cool.
Did some day drinking. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let us know in the comments section here if you did anything fun over your holidays or over your weekend, or really let us know just whatever's on your mind as we go along throughout the show. The comment section is open on YouTube, and really anywhere you're watching this, you can put a comment and we'll pull it up over on the screen. Just to tease here for the news here, just like this. Peter Conklin, Viking Brock rules. Why would Peter say that? We'll talk about it in just a minute. So join the comment section. We'll pull you up on the screen. Wonderful. I see more comments coming in already. You can also give us likes and happy faces or angry faces, whatever it may be. All that stuff is fine.
Ponytail faces, if you want to go that route.
Ponytail, whatever. Just faces, right? Faces. So then here later on in the show, after we talk the news, we're going to hear part 2 of my conversation with Adrian Joud, a.k.a. Arturo Ruiz from WWE, talking Diamond Mine, talking Raw Underground. So very meaty. If you're watching us in video form, you're going to have to catch it here in 57 minutes. We debut it always shortly after the daily's done here at 1 p.m. Eastern over on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel. So you can go check it out there. Same thing, comment section, talk, watch, wrestling things. All right. Then at the end for everybody, audio and video, we'll dive into the mailbag and we're going to talk about Daniel Bryan. But let's get to it here. News you can use. News will leave a bruise. We are having to do we're going to do some sharing here today, some screen sharing, because we're going to start here talking about Brock Lesnar. So Brock was on the Bearded Butchers, or he was recording an episode of a future thing for a YouTube series called The Bearded Butchers, which I now know is a group of men with beards who butcher. That's the whole concept of it, right?
It's a family, I think, of bearded butchers, which is crazy.
Okay, cool.
It sounds like a cult of some kind, right? I mean,
whatever. I'm in. I'm not against it. What butchers, very reputable line of work. No problem with butchers, right? But anyway, the news coming out of this is that Brock Lesnar now sporting this new look. This is the best photo I could find of said new look. This is from our buddy Ryan Satin here. Now it has Brock Lesnar and the goatee, right? We can all see. Can we all see my mouse? Yes. Okay. So here's the goatee. On the site initially it said no mustache. This closer photo seems to say light blonde mustache, right?
Can I just ask, Nick?
Yeah.
Brock's goatee or my goatee? For the video folk out there, right? I got a pretty good goatee going on that matches Brock's right here, right?
Yours is more pointed, his is more rounded, right? And I'd say they're honestly comparable. I don't want to pick one over the other. I don't want to have
all things with me and Brock Lesnar very comparable.
I don't want to have heat with you or Brock. So I'm going to say both good goatees. Now on the top here, we have, it's like a mohawk that is soft, right? That is pulled back into a ponytail because it is cleaned on the side. So I'm imagining if he wanted to, he could do just a mohawk, like a big punk rock style mohawk.
It's super long. That's why he put it back into a ponytail. But if it was up tall, it would be what, like a foot tall, 2 feet tall?
Yeah, it'd be really big. So anyway, he looks like somebody from Tekken now, right? Or like a video game monster of some kind, right?
Oh, I love it. It's just he looks so angry in this picture, right? It's just such a great, oh man, I don't know. This is not the Brock Lesnar I expected coming out of this pandemic, but it's the Brock Lesnar that we all deserve.
Yeah, it's great. And again, just, we're all looking at it's a very video portion of the audio podcast. So hopefully while you're listening to this, you can pull up and see, what we're talking about here. Also, just want to note real quick that there's this man here and there's blood literally coming off of his eye and his nose. And what I'm getting at, I'm very intrigued to see a butchery program with Brock Lesnar. I feel like we're gonna finally see Brock in his real element, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, you should go if you're not. You look at this picture; it's fantastic. But also go check out it's @_bearded butcher and look at all the pictures they have with Brock from this event because he looks so uncomfortable in all of them, right? And he's like doing that Brock Lesnar like intense stare. But then in one of them, they very clearly asked him to smile, and he just looks like that really awkward third wheel, like, "Hey guys, is it over yet? Are we still doing this?" So it's just hilarious. One of them, he has like a giant slab of meat over his shoulder. Like a championship belt, and two of the other guys have actual championship belts. So it's just a lovely photo shoot they did at this event.
One of the other things I thought while looking at this is like Brock Lesnar has many offers coming in right now. I'm sure, right? WWE. Brock is very much gets to pick and choose what Brock Lesnar does. The thing on the big stack of like offers that are out there for things that Brock Lesnar could do, seemingly just because it would be something that he enjoys, is butchery. And I just, it's just a thing we should all remember and take in. And like, that's where in this moment, his priorities were. That's what he most wants to be doing.
We all want to work to that stage in our career where you do the daily grind, we do the grunt work, we kind of move up to where you get to pick and choose your passion projects. And Brock Lesnar's passion project is apparently butchery. Who knew? It makes sense though. He lives in the wilderness.
Also, I just noticed over here in the comment section for this photo, Pollo Del Mar, who's our Thursday co-host, literally thought he was Hammerstone at first glance, right? And there's somebody else saying Goro here. We have Alonzo Smith saying, "Wow, look at Brock Lesnar. He looks like a dad at a bar." Not a night like the Hooters, right? Like kind of bar.
No, it's like a seedy. But you know what, Nick? That Hammerstone comment, that's good, man. I could see this. Hammerstone is jacked right now. Yeah. These two dudes, dude, they could have a brawl. It would be awesome.
If anybody's comparing you, like if you're and anybody's comparing you to Brock Lesnar, like that's a huge compliment. So, all right. Lastly, here we'll do something here from Anthony about Brock, and then we'll move on to other news. Anthony Y, what if Brock is stalling with WWE because Tony Khan goes deep in the pockets to lock in Brock for AEW for a short term? I just don't see it personally, but what do you think, Michael?
Follow the dark money, man. I mean, is Khan the actual mind behind Bearded Butcher Blend here?
Oh, I did kind of think that one guy was John Silver for a second,
Yep.
Looked like Johnny Hungry to me,
You would think, though, in all seriousness, we're having fun with this. It's a funny thing. And Brock can do whatever the hell he wants to do. He's a freaking monster. Like, I just love your haircut, Brock. Please don't kill me. But if he's going to show up in AEW and they're trying to buy time, this makes sense. This is something he can do to fill time. And he's not with WWE as far as I know, unless they're saving him for a surprise. Maybe this Sunday, saving him for a crowd again. You would think if you're doing SummerSlam with Brock, you would have that name out there to build some anticipation already.
Yeah. We also have here from Peter Conklin, Brock Lesnar definitely has whiskey barrels aging in his basement. And lastly here on Brock wants to fight Daniel from Karate Kid. So thus ends our commentary about Brock Lesnar's new look. We did it. We filled nearly 10 minutes of the opening of the show talking about a man's new hairstyle. So, hey, everything Brock does right now is money. And lastly, I guess, before we pivot to some SmackDown talk here, which is largely the chunk of the meatiest chunk of the show, Roman dropped Brock's name on SmackDown. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Yeah. You hear rumors of The Rock, right? And we'll get to some other stuff about that later. You hear rumors of Brock. It seems to me if you're building towards Rocket Mania, you've got to have something big for Roman in the meantime. And man, Brock would be the way to get there, wouldn't he?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, you could do a lot of things with Brock and Roman. I wouldn't inherently have them at each other's throats at first. I think it'd be cool to see them be friends.
Paul Heyman is there. It makes sense with the connection. There's already been some teases from Paul Heyman. He shared a tweet, I think, recently that people read into. Something to do with Brock Lesnar. People were kind of
Facebook cover photo. Cover photo showed Roman or Brock standing over Roman at WrestleMania. I think.
There you go.
Yeah. So
story writes itself, guys. Do it.
All right. So anyway, we'll get back to Brock and Roman here in a little bit. The big news that broke on Friday, actually shortly after we finished doing the Friday Daily, is that Bayley has suffered an injury that's going to have her out of action for 9 months, and thus sent into motion a series of domino type things in the world of WWE. So WWE did reveal this news on Friday. She suffered the injury while training for her upcoming Money in the Bank match. Fightful and PW Insider saying it's a torn ACL. It occurred at the PC, and while she was training, it was noted that her knee popped while she was training. The injury was a freak accident that happened while chain wrestling with another star. Bayley and the other wrestler were participating in the mandatory training sessions that were set up so that wrestlers can prepare for their return to touring next week. There's also talk that Bayley's injury may have caused plans to change for a new incoming talent, but no word yet on who that may be. Two wrestlers on the SmackDown roster were said to be openly frustrated with WWE's lack of depth, I'm guessing for their women's division on SmackDown, and how that left them scrambling to find an appropriate replacement for the match against Belair at Money in the Bank. One wrestler remarked how the company officials did it to themselves, adding that Bayley helped carry the company during some of the most difficult times as of late and was known to be easy to deal with no matter how much more they asked of her. Now, we're going to get to, in just a second, how they're trying to quickly fill the void of Bayley being out of action. But, man, all of us have been talking about Bayley in a very positive way for some time now. And I think this is just really proof of just how much real estate she created as a character in WWE.
You carry that company for too long, it's going to cause an injury, right? I mean, she's done a lot for them in the pandemic era, and even going into the pandemic era, she was such a she's one of those reliable stars that she came out there. She made interesting stuff out of terrible stuff, right? She managed to her character evolved and did some really interesting dynamic things with that. It's unfortunate, and I hate it. And the question is, this division has been lacking for some time. What do you do now? Because the women's division, you go back 4 or 5 years ago, they had just this women's division that was deep, had all this talent. And it felt like in recent years, they kind of sewed that up a little bit and focused on Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch and Sasha and Bayley and some other players. But they really have this core of just these few people who, when they're not there, who do you have left without repeating the same exact matches over and over and over? They started to shift this year. Bianca Belair is a testament to that. But I agree. I think they leaned in too much to the old reliables, and they didn't do enough to develop new stars in the last couple of years. So I hate it for Bayley, but I also hate it for that women's division who's losing a really big star at a really pivotal time.
Dude, and Bayley, like, the thing that sucks so much about this is, like, how Bayley, like Roman, found her voice, really became a wonderful part of SmackDown week in and week out through this period where it's very difficult to create a character that is engaging and can grip you and that you get excited about. And here we are 1 week away from live fans right at the finish line, which she should be getting rewarded for all of this impassioned, wonderful work. And now she's got to sit back for 9 months and watch all these other people get to play. I mean, she's obviously getting a lot of love right now. I'm sure she's as bummed as everybody, but just, it's hard to look away from the fact that this was so close to us getting to see what she would have been like in that space and just taken from us right at that last moment there.
The crowds were ready for her. I mean, her heel turn and everything did happen right before the pandemic. She is primed. She is leaning into this. So I hate it for her, but here's the thing about it, right? Let's put it in context. We still have other people on the roster who can fill in for her. I think WWE does need to do a gut check and think about, we talk a lot about Charlotte, Sasha, Bayley, Asuka. What is it about NXT right now where the women, when they bring them up to the main roster, maybe aren't connecting the same way that they did when they had that 4 horsewomen that they brought up? Like, what do they need to change between that pipeline? I mean, for the men too, but especially for the women. And we go with that. But here's the deal, right? Give Bayley a year. She comes back next year, right before SummerSlam, or 9 months. Can you tighten that up a little bit? Can you come back right around Mania season? She's going to come back to a big stage. She's a veteran at this point. She's still got a long career ahead of her. So I hate it for her, but she's going to be fine. Look forward to having her back sometime in 2022.
All right, so let's look at the domino effect that comes out of Bayley's injury here, because it was glaringly noticeable. A series of big decisions had to be made to compensate for how good Bayley has been in that. That's crazy to me how much stuff they had to do here. So WWE announced that Bianca Belair is now going to defend her title next Friday at the live SmackDown from the Toyota Center in Houston. The return for WWE being on the road, of course. WWE noted earlier that Sonya Deville will be announcing a suitable replacement for Bayley. Deville then announced Carmella versus Belair for next Friday. Liv Morgan ended up interrupting the DeVille and Carmella segment to vent, accusing DeVille of favoritism. DeVille then announced that Morgan's going to replace Carmella in Money in the Bank. And then Liv warned Carmella, saying she hopes she wins the title next Friday so she can cash it in on her. So initially here, right, Bayley can't face Bianca, so now Carmella is gifted this title opportunity, and Liv comes out, is now slotted Money in the Bank. Boom, boom, quick fix there. What do you think of that quick fix?
I love it. I think Carmella is money, right? I've loved Carmella for a number of years. I think that she has proven that she can sit in that slot. They've not done as much with her. So again, when you kind of cool somebody off, you got to build them back up. And unfortunately, they got to build back up somebody very quickly. But I think this is how you do it. But also, WWE creates chaos to cover up gaps in their roster, right? So we don't have this very clear kind of one-on-one matchup they want to lean into. Let's bring a bunch of people in. Let's use Money in the Bank. Timing is right to create some controversy, stir up what's going to happen next. And I think Bianca Belair will come out on top no matter what happens here. But Carmella could be the one to unseat Bianca for maybe a hot minute. And I think she would be the right choice to do it.
Yeah, I do wonder, right? Like, do you want to do something dramatic or not? I mean, it's a live SmackDown. I feel like Bianca's pretty safe, but yeah, whatever. We're at a period right now where things are going to start to be happening. And in the wake of that, and the comments here from some of the roster backstage, it sounds like, that were upset about the depth of SmackDown. Well, how do you fix that? Well, of course, you go raid the cookie jar. You go to NXT, right? You just snag up a bunch of wonderful young talent. So SmackDown saw a vignette for Toni Storm. She's headed to SmackDown. We also saw Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart make their debut as a tag team, billed as Shotzi and Nox. SmackDown saw Nox and Shotzi challenge the women's tag team champions, Natalya and Tamina, non-title. After riding Shotzi's tag to the ring, they ended up getting that win there. We'll likely probably get a tag title match in the not too distant future. I mean, as soon as they came out of Shotzi and Nox, I was like just rolling my eyes.
It sounds clever. Come on, pal. Listen to the way it sounds. It's got a ring to it.
Dude, just Shotzi and Nox. Like, it was weird because Pat McAfee was calling him Shotzi Blackheart and Tegan Nox. And then, like, Michael Cole was calling her Shotzi, but also was calling Tegan Nox. And then the ring announcer announced him as Shotzi and Nox. I feel like the whole discussion about what these women were going to be called on TV was maybe not very fleshed out before they came out on the screen.
It was a reactionary decision. It was a game time call. They don't need last names, do they? Come on, take them off, pal. Listen, I don't want to. This is a pool of great talent coming up. Love it, right? Dig it. But how many times and how many individuals have we seen go away that people got brought up? They're going to be a huge talent. They're going to make a big name for themselves in the main roster, and then 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years later, they're future endeavored. So I don't want to sound down on any of these talent, but I'm not convinced that WWE main roster is going to build them up. Now, the timing maybe helps, right? But also, we are just a couple of months away. What is it? It's going to be August, September sometime. We're going to get the superstar shakeup, right? Draft, whatever else. That's the real chance for them to reestablish. Bring Asuka over, right? She has shown that she can fill in those gaps great, just like Bayley did for SmackDown. Asuka did that on Raw during a very transitionary time. Bring Asuka over, let her run with the belt for a while. She's a great champion. Change it up that way, but give these younger talents somebody to work with. Even if they don't win, give them some meaningful feuds. Do the Kevin Owens thing. Let some of them take on a big name like an Asuka. They may not win it, but that spotlight gets them out there in a more meaningful fashion to the casual fan.
Yeah. Well, let's go to some of the comments here. We have from Samantha. I like the new call-ups, Black, Nox, and Storm. I think it's a good start. Antonio Garcia here saying Toni Storm, also a good choice. We also have Joseph here saying, how long before they eventually chop Storm's name off? I'm going to guess if they had to pick Toni or Storm, they'd go with Storm, right? They just call her, and then they'd be like, that's an X-Men.
Yeah.
And lastly here from Alonzo, this is great. SmackDown needed more women on its roster. I'm especially excited for Toni Storm. She's so talented, definitely is a future SmackDown Women's Champion. Bianca versus Toni would be an incredible match. And so, yeah, largely people seem very happy with this infusion of new women. It's going to be interesting to see what NXT kind of looks like tomorrow night, right? Are these women going to kind of double dip to wrap up because you had Candice LeRae and Tegan Nox kind of, head to head there this last Tuesday, or is it just going to be hard break and we're going to start to create some new female stars down in NXT, which NXT is very, very good at for what it's worth.
Sure. Well, I think they'll probably let them double dip for a while. They typically do that, kind of send them off the right way, and we're heading up to some big pay-per-views. So the call-ups happen, but maybe they do double duty for a while. The bigger question for me, Nick, we talk about all these changes in the women's roster and Bayley falling out, what that does. Bianca Belair has been fantastic, and they cemented her as a star at WrestleMania. Not concerned about that. But AEW, it feels like, is finally figuring out what they want to do with their women's division. And I think that's an interesting dynamic right now, right? WWE's women's division a little bit shaky, and then your competition, which has been criticized in their time in being about their women's division, putting some pieces in the right place. How does this play out moving forward? I think it's exciting, and as a fan, I'm just stoked to see where this goes.
All right, well, let's move away from the women's division and talk about what's going on in the SmackDown men's division at the moment. So Jimmy Uso, of course, recently arrested last week for a DUI. It's been about, I think, exactly a week. It was last Monday he was arrested. So Jimmy Uso was the first thing shown on SmackDown. He appeared throughout the show, indicating WWE has decided not to take swift action against him, at least not publicly or on screen. The Observer saying there were plans that are, quote, too important to adjust, and that's why there doesn't seem to be fallout from what happened with Jimmy. Meltzer was told nothing's happening at the moment in regards to a fine or suspension, and he speculated that since Jimmy is involved in a major angle that could include The Rock at WrestleMania, WWE doesn't want to make waves as they head toward a potential match between WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns and The Rock. And on that note, I will just say that Naomi apparently has deleted her Twitter account due to people blaming her for her husband's recent DUI arrest or just generally being troll douchebags in her DM. So be a better person. But let's focus on Jimmy first. What do you think about the fact that they publicly and on screen have not taken any action, and for the reasons Meltzer seems to be implying here?
I feel like there's a word for that out there. It starts with what is it? A nepotism, right? Getting treated differently because of who your family is. Listen, I know that sometimes companies make business decisions that aren't friendly or people don't like or don't respond well to. I understand that happens. This is a step in a different direction, though, for me. Number one, it is giving somebody a pass for a negative behavior that has consequences simply because you want to do business with their family member. And I think that's crummy. If you know, I go back to Rob Van Dam, they stripped him of both world titles within a matter of a week because of an arrest and DUI or weed or whatever it was at the time, right?
Right.
You are giving him a pass. So that's to me is setting a bad example. Well, we're going to punish people, but we'll give you an exception if we want to do business with somebody in your family that can make us money. That's a bad tone. But the other worrying thing to me is they're doing this at the expense of an individual who has not had this happen once before, but this is what, the third time I think we've had something like this come out.
I think it's the second DUI, but he had a scuffle with the cops a year ago.
That's what it was. Yep.
Okay.
But so maybe not directly related, but this individual, it seems like, needs some help and some support. And rather than do that publicly, we're going to just double down on them because he's going to lead us to the promised land of The Rock. And I think it's a bad example to your locker room. You get treated differently depending on who you're related to. But also it's just not the right thing to do for an individual who got arrested with a don't remember the exact number. What was the number? 2?
Yeah, right.
It was very high.
Triple or quadruple the legal limit. Yeah.
And I just think that's super duper unfortunate. Apologies for not having the number in front of me, but it's just very unfortunate. And I think that's just a crappy way to do business.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, I do want to hedge our comments a little bit just because we don't know what happened backstage, like what conditions there are. But like it would, and you know, look, people can't get help unless they think they need help, right? You can't like force somebody to go to rehab or whatever. But if they're not going to, if somebody like Jimmy in this situation who's right now making bad decisions consistently, is it going to take 30 days to go get their head straight or whatever they need to do to take a breath in this moment, then you need to take them out of the equation, I think, for a period of time. And there's many number of ways you could do that and bring them back and have them be a part of the story. I don't know what is so valuable in this moment that he needs to be there. I'm still very befuddled by that fact. And like for the whole host of reasons that you said, like, you know, there's other obviously bad decision-making and reasons to be doing this right now. I told you I had like an interesting take, and this isn't like a direct comparison or anything, but I've been listening to, unfortunately, the past week, a whole lot of legal takes about the Free Britney movement, right? And Britney Spears' conservatorship and how I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on it. There's, Ronan Farrow did a much better job than I ever will explaining this, but it's a very unique situation she's in because of somebody who is so iconic. They're marketable, look good. There's so much money in them existing, right? That a unique kind of, after they showed a lapse of judgment, a unique kind of arrangement was made to like control this person to ensure that the financial aspect around them continues to go on, right? And I don't want to say that Jimmy Uso and Britney Spears, because like it's very, very, very different situations, but it does seem like because of the value of an individual, decisions are being made to protect them, and that is not like necessarily great. So,
well, that's a great comparison. You look at how bad it's been in the way that Britney has been treated over the years. I think it just highlights when somebody gets kind of into that space and they don't get the help and support they need because of money. What it can
them are more concerned about the bottom line.
Yeah, but not the individual. Well, and I think it even becomes doubly bad, Nick, when you look at the fact that this happened last week. We're a week away from them going back on the road to where travel is going to be a huge component of what he does moving forward, right? It was already there in the past, but we're going to add that dynamic on. So you're telling me, like, if travel's a part of my job and I got a DUI and could not have a license and travel, that's going to impact my ability to do my job effectively. And they're not going to want me out there. We're going to put him back out there in the place where he's gotten in trouble in a more harsher fashion, literally weeks after he had this happen. It's just such a bad putting the talent in.
Yeah. Well, Anthony Y here saying it just shows how WWE operates with no restrictions because Jimmy is in a major storyline. But yet, I bet if a star is on the lower card, they would be suspended or fired. A DUA is a serious thing. And then he followed up saying, I say make an example of the whole situation, suspend him for 6 months. The next time he does it, you're fired. And it would, and again, like, I don't know what punishment is being handed out backstage. Is 6 months the appropriate amount? Is like mandatory counseling for, I don't know what the right answer is here, but like not doing anything seems like the wrong answer, right?
This is the kind of thing where WWE wants to be a big C corporation, right? And do all these things as a big giant business. These are the kind of things most HR departments have a black and white policy on. You get arrested for doing this, right? This is the consequence, simply because they don't want to treat people differently as a result. They can open themselves up to lawsuits if people can say, I was treated differently around these exact same laws. So I think it's strange that they would want to treat somebody differently. And I thought some of the drug policy covered this, although I'd have to look at it again, but they used to have the 3 strikes rule, and you know, people got in trouble for weed. And so I don't know how that plays out differently, but you don't treat these kinds of policy violations separate, depending on who it is. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, what's interesting here is to kind of tie into another broader topic. Like if there was like hypothetically a pro wrestler union, right? There would be an agreement between management and the talent on like what is and is not punishable, right? And this would not be some kind of ambiguous thing that only one person can decide. One day this is good policy, the next day it's bad policy. And again, just because there is no checks and balance. And I would imagine the only people in this circumstance that could maybe push Vince would be the investors, right? If the investors were like, this isn't a good look for us. I saw it on CNN. You got to do something about this guy. But it never rose to that kind of level beyond wrestling, news sites. So I guess didn't feel the need to get pushed that direction.
That's one of the downsides. I think it's a great point, Nick, to having everybody be independent contractors. Lots of downsides to it. But one of the big ones is if they're not technically employees, I guarantee you the people who report to Stamford, Connecticut every day for their jobs or are given benefits and all that stuff, they've got a rule book they have to follow, and they are treated the same no matter what. But when you have contractors, they're responsible for doing their job, but not all the pieces around their job. You can't dictate, how they look outside of that or how they blah, 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 blah. Right. And so it gives somebody like Vince and management the ability to kind of shoot from the hip with stuff like this and make those decisions on the call. Whereas they can't do that for their their actual employees, not their freelance contractors. Right.
Yeah. Cause there's definitely many situations you can point to of people getting DUIs, getting busted and being punished. And like the fact that there's just a double standard in this situation for the myriad of reasons we've listed here just wouldn't happen if there was better representation of the talent. All right. Anyway, so enough of the Jimmy Uso stuff. We got a couple more items here before we get to part 2 of Arturo Ruiz. They're going to be in video form here in about half an hour over on Wrestling Inc.'s YouTube channel. For those that are wondering, the Kevin Nash edition of Broken Skull Sessions did not air over the weekend. It was removed from the schedule mysteriously. I'm hearing, though not completely substantiated, but I'm hearing it may happen after Money in the Bank this Sunday night. So I think like the Lex Luger Icons thing, they're just waiting to kind of give these things stronger lead-ins, I guess, so they're not just kind of thrown out on the weekend and you're hoping your Peacock channel, your connection's good or whatever, you know.
I mean, it makes you get the overhang from pay-per-views. They've done it with a lot of other stuff, so it's just weird because it was the NWO week, right? That's what made that one weird. Yeah,
for sure. It was supposed to like cap the NWO.
Yeah,
that was the tie-in for it, and you know, whatever. All right. I don't know if anybody got to check it out. I'm mostly all the way through it at this point now. ROH presented Best in the World last night. I was very excited to see what their product looked like in front of fans. I think they've done a lot of great reshuffling, not so quietly because they've been doing all in public view. If you want to go online, you can see the work they've been doing, but really reestablishing the product, establishing that pure division, you know, getting away from the Women of Honor. Now they have a women's division. I think some of the new hires like Danhausen and Mike Bennett, great infusion. So anyway, here's a couple of the highlights coming out of the show last night. We have a new ROH World Champion. Bandito defeated Roosh. Chris Dickinson and Homicide, they won the ROH World Tag Championships against Rhett Titus and pure champion Jonathan Gresham. Dragon Lee defeated Tony Deppen for the ROH TV title. And as a big get for the ROH Women's Division, the last entrant in the women's title tournament that's going to happen this summer, Chelsea Green has been added to the women's division over at Ring of Honor. So a lot of title changes, new names. I don't know if you caught it. I don't know if you saw the buzz, but I thought a lot of good stuff last night from Ring of Honor.
I did not catch it last night. I was actually watching In the Heights before it left HBO Max. So if you've not seen In the Heights, loved it, would highly recommend it. Great movie. But okay. I did catch up on the news and did hear about what was kind of happening here. And to me, this sounded like a giant reset button. Like, hey, we're coming out of this and we're going to come out of this with some different faces, some different makeups, get a little bit of a little attention around some of these guys. But I think it's the right call. I mean, you look at that ROH tag team championship changing hands there. I think that's just as super interesting. And I'm like, what do they do with Dickinson and Homicide? I'm like, where do you go with that? Roosh has been in that role for so long, but Bandito, I'm like, I'm intrigued as a, you know, casual ROH fan. Where do we go with these guys next? And who's the next challenger for Bandito? And how do you make that an interesting title run? So I like it, but Chelsea Green, that's the one for me. That's like a unexpected surprise. And I think it could do a lot to kind of reestablish again, WWE having some issues, challenges with women's division makeup right now they're trying to fix. AEW's been going to bat for it. Ring of Honor, you see them making some really interesting moves now as well.
And here's the thing, there's only so many spots at WWE and AEW, right?
Sure.
There are some names that are becoming available here, kind of in waves because of the releases recently. And I really think that Ring of Honor is about to add some star power to what, again, I think has been a good skeleton
sure.
they've been building out the last couple months, right? A lot of these names, like Dragon Lee, popped a little bit more for me. And then, you know, I thought the Danhausen PCO, I love those two together. Like when they signed Danhausen, I immediately wanted to see those two together. I'm glad they're going that direction. When PCO eventually like turns on Danhausen, I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You're going to see this battle of monsters and stuff. But what I think is most interesting here is, and I was talking to a friend just this morning about this, and you know, I have no complaints. I think everything's really well, but I do think it's interesting, and maybe their biggest gamble, that they're putting the Lucha division as their world title kind of division. The rest of the show is a pretty traditionally North American product, even kind of getting back to like pure style wrestling, right? But then the main event, when it comes time for it, is something completely different than like what the rest of the product is that you've seen kind of leading up to that. And in some ways, that's really good. But in other ways, it's like, it's just a very different approach for Ring of Honor to be kind of make, in my opinion, like, you know, kind of the centerpiece for it. It's like you have this new thing you're trying to get everybody buzzed about, surrounded by all this stuff that seemingly already has buzz to it. It's just a very interesting dynamic and balancing act.
Well, you have so much going on in the indies right now. How do you make a name for yourself? I mean, Ring of Honor's been around for 20 years or whatever it is, right? And they found themselves in some pretty deep competition right now. And AEW has kind of sucked the oxygen out of the room when it comes to the big independents. You know, Impact is still doing their thing. I think it's a smart move. It's a great call out. Let's do something that the competition is not doing quite as seriously and make it our centerpiece. But also, you look up and down this card. I mean, you mentioned Danhausen. Danhausen has gone up there and made a name for himself during this pandemic. He was already a force, but since the pandemic, he's been on so many podcasts, right? Sean's podcast, right? Pro Wrestling for Life. He's been on Conan O'Brien. He's done all of these things coming back now from the pandemic. They're just stacked in a way that I don't think any of us expected. And we talked about how they kind of lost their voice there for a while. It's going to be fascinating to see, do they kind of pop out of this in a big fashion? What was the crowd like when you watched the show?
It's kind of dark, right? But I
Sure.
mean, it looked good. It looked loud. I mean, it felt loud. It looked like a bigger crowd to me. But again, it's like they cut the lights off. I don't know how big the building.
But they were like energized and pumped and hungry for this, right?
Yeah, dude. Like, it was so cool. And like, that's what I've been waiting to see, is like, I've been watching this all happen in silence, right? I'm like watching the decisions they're making, the hires, the restructuring. And I'm like, man, like it's a circus with a lot of different attractions to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even when we had Shane Taylor on last week, and I was like, Ring of Honor is the only company with 6-man tag titles. Why is that? Why 6-man tag? Why should you have a division like this? He's like, because it's different, right? There's like, it's faster. There's so many people. There's different ways, matches can end. And so you're like, okay, cool. We're going to start with pure wrestling match. And now we have this women's match. And then we're going to do a 6-man match. And we'll slow it down to a tag match. Then we'll do a traditional singles match. And now you're into your main event with your lucha. And like these different avenues, the TV title division now with Dragon Lee, like there's something to it. I'm really excited to see them find a consistent groove in front of fans and hopefully on TV
There's something for everybody with that, right? You've created a program where you can attract all the different pro wrestling fans and give them something that they want.
And the hope is that they, again, like I say, the lucha thing is maybe the biggest gamble for me, just because the style is just so different. Like everything else is kind of stuff that North American fans, outside of maybe the 6-man stuff, but even with Shane and, his guys are more ground and pound, traditional big man wrestling style. It's not quite lucha rules. I just think it's interesting. We'll see if it pays off. I hope it does for him. I like all those talents and everything. It's just, I don't know if the American fans are 100% there for lucha wrestling in the main event as they are for the other stuff on the card. We'll see. Okay, let's see. Peter Conklin here was asking, was that the first live show back for Ring of Honor? Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to do another one here in like a month or so. Samantha, I like this comment. I find it ironic that ex-WWE stars are getting the women's division going in different brands. That's true, right? I mean, NWA is trying to hop on that bandwagon. Impact is certainly trying to pick up some people. Ring of Honor here now. I do wonder, when Vince and co look back on this huge, massive wave of release that Nick Khan told them was a good idea, did they just feed the beast of everybody,
You're going to see it with the men's as well, but you built up all these talents on a national TV audience in NXT. You brought them up to the main roster, featured them a little bit, but then you let them out into the wild after you put money and time and invested into them. And while I think a lot of them were misused on the main roster, they were still given a platform that maybe they didn't have quite as big before. So then when they go back out there, they got more skills, more experience, more connections, but more fans and people that know about them. That's huge.
Yeah. As I was talking about Mike Bennett there earlier, and we were talking about all this talent that's now out on the marketplace, not only getting picked up for all the different divisions and companies, all their comments from their various interviews are just like, we are flush with content at the moment from Wrestling Inc. Everybody's talking. We got big interviews this week, I promise you. Mike Bennett. I don't usually do a lot of like podcast quotes and recaps unless it gets a lot of attention. This got a lot of attention. Mike Bennett was interviewed by Metro. And by the way, before I get to this, him and Maria did the opening pitch at a Cubs game over the weekend or on like Friday, I think, or something like that.
Yep. It's Friday, I believe.
That's just really cool. All right.
He was stoked about it. He saw him tweeting about it. He was like, dream come true, right? That's awesome.
I hit up Ring of Honor and I was like, hey, if y'all do stuff at Wrigley again, you let your buddy Nick Hausman, who's a 10-minute walk, 10-minute walk from Wrigley Field is where I live. You let me know so I can come down. I'll go down on that field. I will do the best coverage ever for you if you can get me down on those sacred greens down there. And so we have a tacit agreement. By the way, also, I don't know, do you ever watch I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson?
I've just got into that show in the last week, have like almost made it all the way through it. Yeah.
Okay,
so awesome.
Okay, so I don't know if you've gotten to the sketch yet. It's like a courtroom sketch. I don't know if this resonates with you or not.
I don't think it.
So you haven't maybe got there yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, keep your eye peeled because Ring of Honor PR head
Mark Driscoll
is he's a featured part of a sketch, dude.
So I did not see that. I've not seen the skit yet. I just finished episode 2 of season 2. I literally just discovered the show when they released the new one. All of y'all should check it out if you liked Adult Swim. It's hilarious. I cannot put this show over enough. It's smart. It's like if SNL SNL's fine. If SNL gets weird and takes sketches to places where they need to go, it's genius. But I did see him post about it on Facebook because he does a lot of like background extras work, doesn't he? Anyway,
I had no idea he was in it, but I'm sitting there on the couch.
Awesome.
I watched it this weekend. And I was like, that's Ring of Honor's PR head right there. That's Mark Cruffle. He's great, and Brody King's in the season too. So anyway,
okay, there you go.
Yeah, a couple Ring of Honor times.
Great show. Y'all should check it out.
So there was my little Ring of Honor tangent there. All right, so back to Bennett. So he did this interview with Metro where he says he almost played Sister Abigail. And he says puppet was going to represent an actual person. I don't remember. There was talks that I was going to be Sister Abigail and Eric Young was going to be a buzzard.
Everything about their last run with WWE was so super duper weird, right? Brought up to the main roster immediately when they came in, and then they were kind of released and brought back. And like, they just had such an intro. I could have seen this happening, but I just want to know all the fly on the wall conversations around how their moves in WWE happened during their last run. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So that I'm just sad we didn't get that. I got to get Mike back now to tag. I want to pick his brain because he sounded like he was down to do it. He was just excited to get pitched. He's like, yeah, whatever. I'll Sister Abigail. I'll be your Sister Abigail all day. You know,
and it was a main event storyline, right? We got Bray Wyatt out there doing this awesome. Anyway, that's awesome.
I want to know from him what if he had seen sketches of what this would look like. I don't know how far it got into that process, but I'm compelled. I want to know what the final product would have been.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, that brings us to the mailbag portion of the show. Thank you, Michael, for joining me at the top show to talk all the news of the day. Thank you to Adrian Joud, a.k.a. Arturo Ruiz, for that was part 2. So that's the end of it. Both parts now available on Wrestling Inc.'s YouTube channel. But if you're watching this live, it premieres in 15 minutes. It's different. Audio is one way, video the other way. So go take it in. Thank you very much. Wishing him all the best. What a great interview. What a great guy. So also, before we get to the mailbag stuff, Anthony Y here saying, hey, Nick, do you have a Wink Daily AEW All Out after party at your place, right? BYOB. I had talked about this on Friday, the idea that maybe we were going to do a Wink Daily party because I saw I'm getting hit up. Tons of people are coming to Chicago, and I'm getting tons of messages from everybody. I had a listener, Michael, over the weekend who works at a bar that's across the street from the Sears Center that has a fireplace room. And he's like, we should do it here. And I was like,
okay,
sure. Yeah, let's do it. So just so everybody knows, in all seriousness, and I have no idea how many people will show up or whatever, but I think we're actually going to do a pre-all out, maybe post-all out. No, I'll be doing the scrums. Probably maybe night before. I don't know. There's a good chance that we're actually going to do a party. That's awesome. We can all get to meet each other. So stay tuned, right?
That's fantastic.
Page. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway. The problem with wrestling shows in Chicago is that they always kind of are on the outskirts of downtown. So you'll usually have to hike to get to them. Right. So that's the one challenge around, but that's awesome. If you have a hookup, that'd be perfect.
Yeah. It blew me away. I was like, yeah, buddy, let's do this. Anyway, I feel like I should give them credit. I'll dive into my DMs here after this is at the end of the show. So, today's poll question at Wink Daily comes from the Observer reporting about Daniel Bryan's mentions recently on WWE TV, saying WWE keeps mentioning him because he's part of the storyline build to Money in the Bank between Reigns and Edge. The idea is that Bryan is the reason Edge didn't win the title at WrestleMania. It was noted that no one really knows what Bryan's doing, and that if he has made a secret deal with the promotion, they are keeping it a secret until they're ready for a big reveal. Rumors have Bryan returning to WWE, possibly signing with AEW, or maybe even New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I asked everybody, where do you most want to see Daniel Bryan wrestle next? WWE, AEW, New Japan, or somewhere else? Over 350 votes here in just the last hour. Pretty close. 40.9 AEW, 39.8 WWE, 17.1 New Japan, and 2.2 something else. Michael, I'll go to you. Where do you want to see Daniel Bryan wrestle?
I just can't help but think that in the back of my mind, he's going to end back up in WWE, that we're going to have this conversation for a few months, and WWE is going to slot him back in as a surprise run-in for a main event on Raw or something like that. And we'll be like, oh, okay, he's back here, because I did feel like he worked well in their system, despite everybody wanting him to go out and do these amazing dream matches. I would love to personally see him, though, in AEW or in NXT. I know that's never going to happen, but drop him down there into NXT, let him tangle with some of these guys. Hell, bring Samoa Joe out of that commissioner role, or that enforcement role, I should say, and put him against Daniel Bryan. There's a lot of things you could do with Daniel Bryan down in NXT. But I think for me, AEW was where it feels like we have some dream match potential.
See, for me, I actually, and maybe I'm just riding this high off of last night watching Best in the World, or watching this morning, I guess, most of it. I really am interested to see what a Daniel Bryan return to ROH would look like right now.
Sure.
He'd easily be the biggest guy in the company, right? Yeah. I mean, there's so many great, him and Bandito would just be straight fire. You got Brody King there. And then, of course, like, they have the pure division back. And you have a guy in Gresham. Everybody's comparing Gresham to Daniel Bryan now, right? Daniel Bryan, let's see, I pulled this up here. He retired the title. He won and then unified the title with the ROH World title on August 12th, 2006. He was the last ROH pure champion before Jonathan Gresham brought this belt back, right? Mm-hmm. And there's just, I think, a lot you could do with a guy in that space. I know that he loved his time there. Like, they did the Wrestling Road Diaries, where it was him and Cabana driving around. I don't know if anybody remember that. I'm a little old now, I feel, referencing that. But, like, the guy has a real connection there. And if you've got all the money in the world and you got the choice to kind of, like, I just see him as a fit there. I feel like they feed his creative juices. I think there's a lot of great matches for him. That's where I would want right now.
I could see that, but I also think we've been watching wrestling without fans for a year and a half. And I think all of these guys are hungry to do this thing in front of live crowds. And you got to imagine a guy like Bryan wants to go to the biggest crowd possible, whether that is WWE or even AEW. No offense to Ring of Honor, they're just not going to draw that big of a crowd. You get that high, that pop of adrenaline, right?
Yeah. Tyson, number one fan, saying normally I would say New Japan, but at this point in his career, AEW would be fun, but WWE is still the best choice. Still so many dream matches available. Are there in WWE, and his wife wants to return? We don't know that. I don't know about the Bella's return thing. Kind of feels on and off to me,
They need them now. They could use them. Let's bring them back in.
I guess so. Dougal McDougal, too. Anybody that wrestles would want to be in AEW. They've got that spotlight right now. Jeremy W here. Yeah, right in for Ring of Honor and NXT. Same for Matthew here, ROH. Outlaw Jamboree, ROH. I got some ROH. Yeah, I think there's just some good buzz coming off them last night. And then we have from here, AJ Marshall. If Daniel Bryan does return to WWE, he's going to go to Raw. Samantha, I think Bryan just wants to take a break and raise his kids. I think there's probably a lot of truth to that.
Yep.
I think that's probably the closest thing to it. And let's see here. We'll do one from Antonio Garcia. New Japan, we need all of pro wrestling to be strong. So,
I don't think he's going overseas. Not with kids, not with where he is right now.
No.
He's also looking at a career past wrestling, I believe. So,
Hi, Kareem. This is his first time watching live, by the way.
Well, welcome, Kareem. Glad to have you here.
All right, everybody. That's going to be the end of the show here for today. I want to thank everybody once again for tuning in. What an awesome, fun way to start the week. I'll be back tomorrow. Second City Chicago's EJ Cameron will be here with me. We are also going to be airing part 2 of Pollo Del Mar, a.k.a. Paul Pratt's conversation with Mickey James. So, yeah, very, very, very star-studded lineup here this week on the show. Some big interviews I have coming up this week, too, so just stay tuned. And if you like the Wrestling Inc. Daily, support WrestlingInc.com. We're on all the socials. And, of course, the Wrestling Inc. podcast goes live at night after all the big shows, and you can subscribe to that on all major podcast platforms as well. Michael, what do you want to plug, promote, put over here to wrap up the show today?
No, I enjoyed. Thank you for having me here, Nick. It was a great Monday to kick things off. But I am on Twitter at The Real Wiseman if you want to stay up in between these Monday showings. But otherwise, stay in touch on there and keep checking out the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Yes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm at Nick_Hausman over on Twitter. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.